For all its shortcomings, one of the things Kerbal Space Program 2 did well was its graphics. Kerbin was covered in trees and grass and flowers, for example, while KSP 1 looks a little bit barren by comparison. But, with the help of graphics mods, these days Kerbal Space Program 1 looks stunning, arguably better looking than the sequel. And one of the best graphics mods, Parallax 2, is about to have a successor, Parallax Continued, which is now available in early access on its developer's Patreon page, linked below, and I had to check it out. So that's what we're going to do in this video, which was sponsored by Movaglobes. More on them a little bit later on. For those unfamiliar, Parallax adds a ton of ground scatter, breathes life into the stock Kerbal Space Program system, and majorly improves the game. And the surface features can have collision enabled as well, which creates really fun new gameplay challenges for things like rovers. These shots you can see here are from the Parallax 2 release trailer, and as you can see, they're pretty mesmerizing, so I can't wait to see how things are improving with Parallax Continued. Let's begin with the construction of our rocket. Where are we going to go? Well, I'm going to keep that a little secret for the moment, but this is going to be a very long trip, and we're going to be landing on several different celestial bodies to check out their new revamped aesthetics. The distance we're going to be covering is probably becoming evident by the sheer number of liquid fuel tanks that I'm adding to this rocket, which will be powered by the nuclear engines to give us a nice big budget of Delta V. For a moment, I jumped to a separate workspace to construct the lander, which will carry Kerbals down to the surface of the places we're going today, along with some science experiments. I designed the lander to be powered by liquid fuel and nuclear engines as well, so that when the lander is docked to the command ship, both vehicles will be able to use their engines simultaneously and share fuel, boosting the overall thrust-to-weight ratio of the entire vehicle to help make long interplanetary burns more bearable. The downside to nuclear engines is that they're very long, so using them for a lander typically results in a very tall vehicle. I've tried to minimize the height by having this kind of 4-node setup of 2 nuclear engines sitting alongside 2 sets of liquid fuel tanks, and the fuel tanks will provide a structural attachment surface for our landing legs, solar panels, batteries, and ladders. Ladders, of course, will be required due to that aforementioned height of the lander. But the lander itself is pretty much done. I decided to change up the command pod a little bit. I'm building this out of stock parts with the restock enhancement mod, but I didn't really like the appearance of the kind of Mark II land can at the top. Looks a bit generic and boring, so I came up with this kind of weird custom land module where I had the 2 Mark I lander cans sitting either side of the Mark II lander can in its rover configuration. I don't know if I like how it came out, to be honest. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But I think it's a nice little shake-up from just using a normal, boring-looking Mark II lander can, which I've used so many times on this channel at this point. But that is the lander done. We're now back in our main workspace so we can continue building the rest of the rocket. Now, like I said, I wanted the command ship and the lander to be able to fire their nuclear engines simultaneously when doing big, long interplanetary burns, just to speed it up because the nuclear engines have very low thrust-weight ratio. And so I had to attach the engines of the command ship on these like arms while I used the big S wing strakes to act as attachment points, so that the exhaust from the command ship's engines would pass by the lander and not just burn directly onto it, which, of course, would be very bad for any engine, but especially bad considering these are nuclear engines. But other than that, I think that's pretty much the spaceship done. I added a little Kerbal Space Program logo to the bottom of the command ship there, and then that's it. Now it's just time to encase it in a fairing and just build a big dumb booster underneath it. Really, there wasn't really there's nothing really to write home about with this rocket. It's just a 5-meter size rocket. That's it. That's all I got, to be honest. But let's now take a look at the beautiful Parallax Continued. Look at those trees. Look at the grass. Look at the flowers and the plants. Oh, it is absolutely gorgeous. And fun fact, things like big rocks and trees, they've all got collision, but the blades of grass don't by default. As you can see, you can change the config settings of the mod so that things like blades of grass and flowers have collision meshes as well. There is a disclaimer in the config settings saying, like, only do this just for a bit of fun, because it's very annoying, as you can sort of see here. But look, Jeb can stand on a flower. Doesn't that look nice? almost as nice as Mova Globes, sponsor of today's video. I love my Earth and Jupiter Mova Globes, so much so that Mova has hooked me up with 2 more. A quick unboxing revealed the Moon and Mars, 2 places we'll hopefully see humans land in our lifetimes. Mova Globes are so much better than your average globe. They rotate on their own, no power cords or batteries here, thanks to hidden internal magnets that generate the spin when exposed to light. Setup is super simple. Just align the bond line with the equator and ensure the rounded sides of the 3-prong base are touching the globe, and while you're doing all that, you'll probably notice how the globes continue spinning while you're holding them. Another really cool feature. There are over 40 designs available on Mova's site, including world maps, artworks, and of course outer space, which feature NASA-sourced images of planets and constellations. I am so in love with all my Mova Globes. I cannot recommend them enough, especially with my discount code for you. Get 10% off 6-inch and 8.5-inch Mova Globes with my code MATT10 at the link below. Massive thank you to Mova Globes for sponsoring today's video. So here we are in the tracking station, time warping to a transfer window. But a transfer window to where, you may be asking? Well, see if you can guess. Do you play Kerbal Space Program enough? Actually, it looks like we're at a Juno transfer window, doesn't it? Because Juno is 45 degrees ahead of us. But no! We are time warping to a Jool transfer window, where Jool needs to be about 101 degrees ahead of Kerbin. Why Jool? Well, I had a chat with Lynx, the creator of Parallax Continued, asking him, where's the best place to go? Okay, it was kind of a long message that he sent me, so we'll recap that in a second. But for now, let's zoom in. Oh, look at that beautiful vegetation. Look at that beautiful blue sky, and look at that beautiful orange rocket. Well, at least one of the fuel tanks is orange, so that's enough of a qualification for me to call this an orange rocket. And there we are. Let us fade in the UI and launch. But yeah, like I mentioned, the game is looking absolutely beautiful. Now, as much as I love Parallax Continued, I can't let it take all of the credit here. I do have quite a few visual mods installed. To just list them, first of all, we have Waterfall. That's providing that beautiful engine plume at the bottom of the rocket. We also have Restock, which is basically a reskin of all the stock parts to make it look a bit nicer, a bit more clean, a bit more modern. We also have Scatterer, which, as you might guess, adds atmospheric scatter. Don't know why that was so hard to say, and it improves the water as well. We also have environmental visual enhancements and stock volumetric clouds which are currently disappearing below us very rapidly. We also have deferred rendering installed and TUFX with Black Rack's profile, and then we've got HUD replacer with the Z theme. That's why my UI is nice, dark and clean. We've also got Planet Shine installed, and of course we have Parallax Continued, and I have set the default lighting quality levels to the highest possible setting. I hope I didn't mess up the editing of the config file. Links, if I've messed it up and you're watching this, I'm very sorry. And rereading your Discord message, I'm now just exclusively talking to Links now. I could just message him on Discord, but you know me, I just will probably forget once I finish recording this video. But yeah, he mentioned that for the most part, Parallax Continued isn't like a massive visual change, at least. For the most part, the mod heavily focuses on performance and stability improvements, with the visual changes comprising about 10% of the effort, in Lynx's words. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, as a video, this isn't going to be like the best medium to demonstrate the improvements from Parallax 2.0 to Parallax Continued, but maybe it will, and hopefully if you download this and install it, you'll see the changes yourself. Again, it's in early access at the moment, so it's available on Lynx's Patreon page, which I have linked below. But yes, to recap his message he sent me, because it was a long message I didn't show on screen for that long, because you've probably seen the runtime of this video. I wanted it to not be too ridiculous. He said that the icy Minmus flats are something people have seemed very excited about. Kerbin's forest look a lot nicer. I feel like I sort of briefly showed that during the zoom down to the launch pad. That was, to be honest, the first thing I noticed when I loaded up my my campaign mode. What's it even called in KSP1? Science mode. And I saw the Kerbal Space Center. There was lots more trees. It just looked a lot nicer. And there's subsurface scattering on the tree leaves and foliage as well, which I guess makes the trees look nicer. as even more so. So those are kind of the things that he mentioned to me. There might be things on like his Patreon page and GitHub that I just didn't read properly, so there could be more. But that's kind of the gist of what he said to me. So I felt like he mentioned specifically that people liked the icy flats of Minmus, and his favorite texture overhauls were Bop and Vall and Minmus. Well, let's go to Bop, Vall and Minmus. So it took me like 10 minutes to actually tell you guys where we're going. I say this like we're already well on our way to Minmus, aren't we? Now, you may recall, because it wasn't that long ago in the video, when I said we were time warping to a Jool transfer window. I kind of made a bit of a blunder here, so I time warped exactly to a Jool transfer window, but that assumes that we would like launch, go to low Kerbin orbit, and then go to Jool. But we're not going to go Jool, because obviously we have to go to Minmus first, and Minmus is quite far away from Kerbin. Look how tiny Kerbin is in the background there, almost occluded by the solar panel there. And so it takes a long time to get to Minmus. And so by the time we've done the Minmus mission, a significant time has passed where we're no longer at a perfect Jool transfer window. Now, luckily, we're going to Jool, right? Jool has got the biggest gravity well of any celestial body in the Kerbol System. Cue now the smart people saying, oh, actually, you know, the sun has a bigger gravity well than Jool. We get it, you're very clever. But yes, Jool has a very large gravity well. So it's not that important that we're like as exact, like we have to, it's very easy to get an encounter with basically because it's got a huge amount of gravity. So this kind of mistake on my part is only going to cost us a very small amount of delta V, and it's not going to be too difficult to get an encounter with Jool because, again, as long as our ship's orbit vaguely passes in Jool's vicinity, we will just get the encounter. We can fine-tune it. And when it comes to capturing around Jool, it's going to cost us basically nothing because we can use the beautiful thing that is Tylo to give us a lovely gravity assist straight into a stable Jool orbit. And then we can get a Vall encounter fairly trivially. Getting to Bop, though, is sort of difficult because Bop is at this really awkward inclined orbit, much like Minmus is in an awkward inclined orbit around Kerbin. And what an idea it would have been to just talk about going to Minmus before I start talking about going to Jool, you know, while I was on the way to Minmus. But hey, I guess we've not quite landed on Minmus yet, so I can talk about this now. I mean, you know, I've done a lot of Minmus missions on this channel. I'm guessing this is probably not your first Matt Lowne video. If it is, welcome. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the journey so far. Let's add a little graphic to the bottom right. I've put this little graphic in like a few videos now. Do you guys like it? Is it really annoying? I think it's kind of cute. It's like a bit more like personal than the generic download that everyone just takes, where it's just you know, like this one I'm showing now, which I'm now realizing could be seen as a overt way of me getting another make sure you like, comment, subscribe message in. I thought having the little custom one just makes it a bit more, I don't know, you know, it's just I kind of stole the idea from Tech Dweeb, channel I've been watching. He does like retro handheld reviews, and he has a little cutesy thing like that, and I'm like, I'm gonna steal that. So sorry if you're watching this, Tech Dweeb. I will not be paying any royalties to you, I'm afraid. But look at the surface. Moving on. Now that you guys have all finished liking and subscribing and commenting, etc., etc., we've now landed on Minmus, and I see what GameZings means about the beautiful icy surface. Look at the lighting. This is incredible. Like, compared to, like, stock Kerbal, like, look, this is what stock looks like there, and then we go back, like, oh, isn't this just so amazing? And by the way, little challenge to any Matt Lowne historians in the comments, if you can figure out what video that clip was from of me showing stock KSP, then you will get literally nothing, but I'll heart your comment if enough people, like, upvote it, like, give it a thumbs up, because I don't keep, like, I haven't got, like, a really big hard drive backup server or anything. I'm just got my one PC, and so raw footage I have to just delete every now and then, so I haven't got any, like, raw footage. So whenever when I show previous things I've done, or examples of older versions of KSP, or, like, here, I show stock KSP, I have to just dig up a YouTube video I made. I do have backups of all of my YouTube videos. That's not true. There was, like, a period between, like, 2019 midway through to, like, midway through 2020 where I must have just accidentally deleted a folder, so I'm missing about, I don't know, 20, 30 videos, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, so if you can figure out and write the name of that video, you'll get a little heart next to your name if it gets enough upvotes, because I get a lot of comments on my Kerbal Space videos, so it's hard for me to necessarily see all of them, although I do make a good effort to try and read as many comments as I possibly can, which maybe is a good transition to me saying, Planet Coaster, I saw a lot of you guys, I saw some of you guys at Space Creator Day 2024, and a lot of people, and it's actually not just at Space Creator Day, just in general, whenever I interact with people on my Discord, or on Reddit, for example, or Twitter, or X, whatever it's called, you know, people say, can you bring back Planet Coaster? And I had no plans to bring back Planet Coaster, to be honest, until, of course, Planet Coaster 2 was announced, and it's coming out, it's like 2 weeks, or less than 2 weeks, isn't it? It's like the beginning of November. I can't remember the exact date, so, you know, does that mean I'm not as excited for it? I'm very excited for it, guys, and it's going to make a comeback, and I'm segueing into this because I said just then that it's hard for me to read all the comments on my Kerbal Space Program videos, because they get a lot of comments. I don't know how to say that without sounding like really arrogant. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying I generally get quite a lot of comments on my Kerbal Space Program videos, but not so much on my Planet Coaster videos because no one watches them. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to start re-uploading a video series that wasn't very popular, and thus probably do my channel no favors in the eyes of the YouTube algorithm. But whatever, I love playing Planet Coaster, and so if we're going to play the Planet Coaster anyway, may as well make some money out of this, I guess. I keep meaning to make a Planet Crafter series as well. I've got like 50 hours of Planet Crafter gameplay recorded, and I've just completely overwhelmed. I don't know how to make it into a series, because it's like a first-person video game. And so it's not like Kerbal Space Program, like here, I'm showing you footage. This was like maybe 4 or 5 hours of footage in total. I can cut it up and speed it up and cut bits out and all that. It's harder when it's a first-person game, because time warping, like first-person gameplay, is very, very difficult to watch. So I was thinking about doing a, what's the guy's name? I saw a video series like 5 years ago. It was before COVID existed. It was a Minecraft hardcore. It was 100... Luke the Notable. That's it. This guy made a video series. Well, I don't know if it was a series or one video. It was so long ago now. But, he made, basically, I survived 100 days in hardcore Minecraft or something, and here's what happened. And it basically just shows snippets from each day. So I was thinking about doing something similar, saying, this is how I terraformed a planet. By the way, that's what you do in the Planet Crafter, you terraform a planet. So here I am, landed, and then blah, blah, blah. We won't get any spoilers. And it just, like, cuts and just shows snippets. I don't know if you guys got any, or do I just upload a 50-hour-long video? I'm not going to do that. I have a life to lead. But, you know, I'm brainstorming ideas. I'll probably just get overwhelmed and never finish it. But, you know, whatever. Anyway, as you can see, our space frogs have been reunited and have docked in Minmus orbit. So now it's time to do the long part of the mission. Oh, I've retracted the solar panels. I probably should acknowledge the fact that I don't know why the solar panels are retracting weirdly sometimes. I think, is it just a glitch with that particular part? I don't think I've ever used these particular solar panels before, or at least not frequently enough that I remember this glitch being a thing. Is this a glitch, or have I just had a weird, this craft is just weird and it just summoned this kind of Kraken bug? I don't know. But yeah, the solar panels sometimes retract weirdly in this mission. So, as you can see, we're going to go to Jool, but counterintuitively, I've actually lowered my orbit. So rather than just, you know, burning to Jool from Minmus, which is nice and high away from Kerbin, we're going back to Kerbin, and then doing our burn at Periapsis. I know most of you are probably familiar at this point about the O-berth effect. It is much more efficient to do this burn as close to Kerbin Periapsis as possible. The reason for this, in like very, very oversimplified terms, is because rockets gain more energy from fuel when moving faster, and you're moving faster when you're at your periapsis. This is because kinetic energy increases with the square of... I had to write this down because I'm like not articulate enough to just be able to say this without a script. This happens because kinetic energy increases with the square of speed, so burning fuel at high speed adds more energy. Spacecraft use this effect by firing engines at periapsis, maximizing fuel efficiency. So there we are. I hope that's correct, and I didn't just make a mistake somewhere. But that's essentially how the O-berth effect works. The faster you're going, the more efficient your energy transfer is. Anyway, as you can see, we have a Jool encounter, but it's not a very good Jool encounter. Our periapsis is nowhere near Jool itself, so we're going to do a mid-course correction burn to try and get ourselves on an intercept with Tylo. You may remember in the ancient times of 10 minutes ago, I said that we can use Tylo to give us a gravity assist to capture into Jool orbit for the low price of free. Well, it's not free, we have to do the burn that gets us on the intercept with Tylo, but it's certainly a lot cheaper than it would be doing a burn using our engines ourselves. Tylo is a very massive moon. The easiest way to kind of represent this is it's basically just Kerbin, but without the atmosphere. So it's not quite the same as Kerbin. I think it's very, very slightly less massive than Kerbin, but for all intents and purposes, it has the same mass as Kerbin. But it's a moon of Jool. which shows how big Jool is. Or does it tell us how small Kerbin is? I'm going to wager it's the latter. Because did you know, this is a little fun KSP fact, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but if it wasn't intentional, it's certainly a very fun coincidence that Jool is about the same size as Earth, which of course is in our real solar system. Something of course I can abbreviate into RS. Anyway, let's move on to, usually when I say let's move on, I then look back at my screen to see, what am I doing now? So I can talk about that, and I give myself kind of another platform to build tangents upon, but I am still plotting our Tylo encounter, trying to get our Peyruis as close to Tylo's surface as possible. You might notice this kind of throughout the video and just then, where our orbit line seems to magically move around, despite the fact I'm not, our thrust is currently 0 on the little thrust meter, and that's because I'm using RCS, like using the monopropellant thrusters. You can do that by, enabling RCS by pressing the R button on your keyboard, and using H and N for forwards and backwards, and I, J, K, and L for like up, down, left, right. That's how I'm able to manipulate my orbits, despite not firing our nuclear engines. And there is our pass of Tylo, which means we should now be comfortably in Jool orbit. So our Peyruis is actually slightly higher than Vall's orbit, so we're going to do a small retrograde burn at apogee, and then as you can see, I'm just playing around with the maneuver node maker until we have a Vall encounter. Now I briefly considered, you might have seen like a red orbital line there, that would have been a second Vall encounter from our first one. So I did briefly consider doing this and essentially using Vall to get another gravity assist, saving us a bit more fuel. But we have way more fuel than we need. We have like 3,783 meters per second, does that say, on the Delta V readouts at the top? So I feel like we don't really need to do more gravity assist than we need to save fuel that we don't need to save. And so on that, here we are executing that burn to get ourselves our Vall encounter. And there it is. Our encounter is nice and set, so we can, I guess, plan another maneuver node. So yeah, 586 meters per second. So it's not cheap to capture around Vall. It's worth it. It's very, very beautiful with the Parallax Continued mod. I know we've obviously not got there yet, but spoiler alert, I actually did this. I filmed this. I edited it. I've seen it. So I could guide you to treasure that whatever. It's getting late, to be honest, guys. Sometimes my brain just fizzles out and stops working for brief moments. I've been editing this video all day. Well, I filmed the video, then been editing it all day, and now I'm recording the commentary, and it needs to go live tomorrow, so I'm recording this on Friday, the 25th of October, 2024, and it's currently 8 minutes to 9. And that's PM, right? So that'll be 2052 in what Americans would call military time and what everyone else in the world would call time. So there you are. There's an idea of there you are. You see me annoying most of my demographic and also giving you guys an idea of the time that I'm recording this video. So here we are in Vall orbit. I'm transferring fuel from the command ship into the lander because we use a lot of fuel in the lander to do the Minmus landing, such that it does not have enough Delta V to do the Vall landing unless we transfer fuel like we just did. Because Vall is not actually the easiest planet to land on. Well, it's not a planet, but it's not the easiest celestial body to land on. I'm guessing most people who play Kerbal Space Program have never landed on Vall, because I know like the Steam achievement statistics show that most don't even land on the Mun, which is a substantially easier place to land on. Not just because of its proximity to Kerbin, you haven't got to like go to the Jool system, but also the Mun literally does take less Delta V to land on. I think Vall, and I don't know, and I'm not going to pause my commentary to check, but my kind of figure I work with in my head is it takes about 900 meters per second to land on and then take off from Vall again. So that's each way, right? So 1,800 in total. So it takes a lot more. The Mun takes about 600 meters per second by comparison. So Vall is like 300 more. I might be way off, but I think that's about ballpark accurate. But moving on, look at the surface. I forgot. That's why we're here, isn't it? I'm showcasing Parallax Continued. And wow, what a beautiful... We again have this lovely... I've always considered Vall sort of like the sister to Minmus, because they're both turquoise. And that's essentially it. Well, I guess they have big flat plains as well. I mean, yeah, it is stunning. And, it's funny, I compared Minmus to stock Minmus when we, did Minmus. I could compare this to stock Vall, or I could go with Lynx's suggestion and compare this to Vall from KSP2, which, yeah, doesn't... not that great, is it? I mean, one advantage of the KSP2 Vall was that it had subsurface oceans, which were very cool, but doesn't really make up for the rest of, you know, that. So I think Kerbal Space Program 1's Vall with Parallax Continued is the best on reflection. And that was a play on words, because look at the reflection of the light. Look at that. Is that the green? Oh, actually, I think that might be the green service bay light. I was thinking, is that the green light of Jool, either from Parallax Continued or from Planet Shine? Like reflected on the ice on the ground? But it might be I've got the service bay lit up green, which is why we have a green hue on the ground. Ah, I only just realized that. But maybe it is the light from Jool. Who knows? I don't want to make one statement either way, because I'm not technically qualified enough to be able to say. But either way, we do have like reflection quality on the ground. I mean, look, Jebediah can't stop looking at it. But after he got his bearings, I thought, let's go and have a look at some of the other surface features, because we have these big, I guess, chunks of ice on the surface here. But over there, we have some, look, spike. I'm not a geologist. These might have a technical name that I'm not aware of, but they look like, I guess, like stalagmites. Which are the ones that go up? They're stalagmites, right? Or are they stalactites? I feel like stalagmites are the one that go up, right? It's just like having a conversation with myself. I decided to see if I could get Jebediah to sort of sit on the top, but he couldn't. And, oh, very nearly met a horrible death, getting impaled on one of the possible stalactite structures. But he survived in the end. So we can get Jebediah back on board the ship nice and safe, so he doesn't have any more near-death experiences. And then we can have another sort of continued bit of exploration with Bill Kerman. So this time I'm going to that little sort of plume of, is that smoke or gas in the distance? This is not part of Parallax or any mod, in fact. These are the geysers, which I believe are from the Breaking Ground DLC. I don't think they're in the stock Kerbal Space Program game. You need the Breaking Ground DLC to see these. I might be wrong now. I'm fairly sure these are from Breaking Ground, right? But yeah, we got these little geysers here. So, yeah, Bill Kerman naturally just dived straight in without taking any precautions whatsoever. I guess he raised his visor there. I'm talking as if it wasn't me just controlling it the whole time. There, there he is. Where's he? Where's he gone? There he is again. Are we going to do another little peekaboo? Never mind. Okay, that was rubbish. let's head back to the ship and continue on our big, long quest, because we've still got a lot of video left to go, because, of course, we need to get to Bop, which I mentioned in the ancient times of 15 minutes ago. It is quite challenging to reach. I have no idea it was 15 minutes. It might actually be a bit longer than that, because we're now almost half an hour into this video, where I mentioned him. Minmus is hard to get to because it's on a tilted orbit. Well, Bop is on a very tilted orbit as well. So reaching it and then getting away from it, getting back home, can pose a bit of a challenge. So you've got all of that to look forward to. But first things first, Bill Kerman is going to climb this little ladder here just to collect the data from our service bay. Now, neither Bill Kerman or Jebediah Kerman are scientists, so that Science Junior and Mystery Goo unit are inoperable, but in orbit on the command ship, we have Bob Kerman, who is a scientist, so he can reset. Now, I'm not, like, actively trying to get lots and lots of science. Like, I'm not trying to maximize our scientific output from this mission, because I have a fully unlocked tech tree, and so I don't need the science. I just like having something to do when on the surface of planets and moons. So don't take this as like a guide of when to do your science experiments. In reality, you're going to be doing the science experiments a lot more than I've been doing them. So kind of in space up near to Vall, space high above Vall, all the interplanetary places we've been to. So interplanetary space, then I guess Jool orbits. When we were in Tylo orbit, we were in space near to Tylo and high above Tylo. Loads of opportunity to get loads of science. So I'll show the scientific total at the end in terms of how much science points we gained, but it's nowhere near what we could have potentially earned. So just sort of clarifying that I only brought the science experiments for fun. For fun? Why would you want that in your video game? I find that, like, my patience for video games is, like, way worse than it used to be when I was, like, young. I guess because I have a job and I have a YouTube channel to manage as well. When a game wastes my time, I have a lot less patience for it. I'm like, you know what? This is not fun. I'm not gonna be your dancing monkey. EA Games trying to do this rubbish thing just to get a bit of a dopamine hit in 5 hours time. I'm just gonna not do this anymore. I bought myself an Anbernic RG. Oh, it's a stupid long name. It's an Anbernic RG35XX SP. Hope I got that right. It's basically when I were young, I had a Game Boy Advance SP. great. Goated console, such a great form factor. And now this company called Anbernic has basically made a clone of the Game Boy Advance SP, but it has 4 face buttons, not 2, and it's much, much more powerful. Like, it can play Dreamcast and PSP and PS1 games. And so I've been having a real blast, playing loads of games from my childhood and playing a lot of Game Boy Advance games, because it is a Game Boy Advance SP clone. Like, it is... the only reason it can possibly exist is because I believe Anbernic is a Chinese company, and, you know, in China, there isn't really any such thing as copyright, so they can get away with it. So yeah, it's great. I love it. I bought it from AliExpress. It's like £60. It's really cheap. And you can play old school Game Boy Advance games. And the reason I even brought all of this up was because I said that I have a lot less patience for games not being fun. So I've been playing a lot of F-Zero GP Legend. I used to love that game as a child, played it loads, and it's got a campaign mode. I'm going to play the campaign. And you play as like all the different characters from the F-Zero GP Legend anime. I can't remember the way this came round, and maybe like one person watching this actually knows. But like, there was the F-Zero GP Legend anime and the F-Zero GP Legend Game Boy Advance game. And I think the Game Boy Advance game was made to sell the TV show. Or I don't think it was the other way around, but it might have been. Either way, really good game. The TV show is like on YouTube as well, like it's a preserved lost medium, and it was alright. I think it's for like kids, so I wasn't really that engaged by it. But I watched like the first few episodes just so I had that nostalgic connection to a game I played loads as a child. But yeah, and I was playing through all the story modes, and then the final story mode you play as Black Shadow, who's like the game's main antagonist, and it's just the most awkward, fiddly, tricky mission objectives, and I'm just like, I was trying to meet the arbitrary requirements of the game. Like, I think you have to like side attack another racer, but there's not really an obvious visual indication that you've done so. And I just did it about 5 restarts. I couldn't do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not wasting my time doing it. I've beaten every other thing on this game, and I beat the game as a 12-year-old. So I know that I could do it. So I just dropped the game. I'm like, now I'm going to do something else. And so now I'm playing... What am I playing? I've not started it yet, but I know what I'm going to play next. I'm going to play Astro Boy Omega Factor. Amazing, underrated Game Boy Advance game. If you've not played it, buy yourself an Anbernic RG35XXSP, if that is the name and I haven't messed it up. Or just, you know, buy the Game Boy Advance game if you've got a Game Boy Advance. Or get an R4 card, put it on an SD card. You can play lots. And I'd have no... This is not piracy because it's emulation. There's no legal way to buy Astro Boy Omega Factor anymore, so no one is losing money on this. You're preserving a lost medium. Now I'm going to move on before I get myself in hot water with... But would you look at that, with all that hyping about saying, oh, Bop's quite tricky to reach, I seem to have got a Bop encounter. Without even realizing it, I got so carried away talking about nostalgic video games that I didn't even notice that I have a Bop encounter. A fairly tenuous Bop encounter. As you can see, our Peyruis is not really that close to Bop. And as you can see, we did a lot of our I'm doing the air quotes thing, circularization outside of Bop's sphere of influence. So when you're circularizing around a planet or moon, you're basically just matching orbits with it. And as you can see, I had to match my spacecraft's orbit to be fairly similar to that of Bop's orbit around Jool, which is, on paper, fairly inefficient. Remember what I said about the O-Birth effect? But Bop is so tiny that the O-Birth effect may as well not exist. Look at our orbital velocity, 140.5 meters per second, which and it's slower. We've slowed down now as well. So the O-Birth effect, okay, it exists for Bop, but it's not quite as significant as it would be for a place like, you know, Tylo, Lathe, Vall, Mun, etc., etc. Anyway, now we're going to perform our final landing, but before we can do that, Bob, which is a name similar to Bottom, that's rubbish, is going to get out and reset our mystery goo and Science Junior experiments one last time before we go down to the surface. And I remembered I had a magnetometer boom experiment with me. The magnetometer boom can only run from space. Like, it doesn't work when you're landed on the surface of a celestial body. I thought it'd be a shame to bring this and never use it because it's a pretty cool looking part. So I quickly did that experiment there. I say that I didn't want to waste a science experiment, but we do have the surface scanning module. What's it called? The one that looks like an air intake that's by the magnetometer boom on the back of our Science Junior. I don't think I actually ever ran that experiment in this mission. But again, just doing it for fun. That's all I'm doing it for. There's no other reason. Well, I mean, the reason was because it's my job, A, and B, I wanted to showcase Parallax. So that's, anyway, moving on. We're going to land on Bop. Now, Bop is kind of a challenging place to land on because its surface gravity is so low. It's kind of hard to come to just a nice, safe stop on the surface and not just, bounce around, never coming to a complete halt. It's not quite as bad as Gilly. Gilly is like really, like you essentially can't land on Gilly. It's very, very hard to come to a complete stop because its surface gravity is so low. And it's also not quite as bad as Pol either, which is the smallest moon of Jool. But it's still quite tough. So I kind of treat landing on places like Bop as more akin to docking. So I'm aiming to touch down on the surface at less than 1 meter per second. So there's less kind of inertia. Those landing legs will have a bit of a spring if we hit the ground too hard. So I'll come down as slow as you possibly can. Did I manage to get it under 1 meter per second? I think I did. And there we are. Our final celestial landing of this mission. Of course, we came here because Link said that he was really, really happy with Bop's terrain texture overhaul. Because as part of Parallax Continued versus Parallax 2.0, all of the terrain textures, losing the ability to speak it would seem, all of the terrain textures got overhauled. And Link's favourites were Kerbin, Bop, Vall and Minmus. Well, now we've done all 4 of the things. Now, one message he sent me, which I did not include earlier in the video, was that Lathe is really nice as well. But currently, there is a visual bug with the icebergs. Whoa, there are icebergs? What? There's a visual bug with the icebergs that he's trying to iron out. He didn't elaborate on that, but he just said, don't get too close to them. So, guys, I was thinking, maybe I could do life on Lathe again. I think I will, but I'm going to wait for him to iron out said visual bug. Links, if you're watching this, shoot me a message on Discord about, what the bug is. I'll try and message you after I've done this video, if I don't just pass out from exhaustion after completing the commentary, which is, as you can see, guys, I've slowly sort of lost the ability to speak with coherence. You might argue I never had the ability to begin with, but either way, the ability has certainly deteriorated somewhat. Once the commentary is done, I don't just then hit render, and then got to do all the other stuff, like add the music and things. Like, you guys might not know this if you don't know that much about video editing and the way videos work, but I always have the Kerbal Space Program soundtrack playing in the background, which is what plays in the background when you're playing the game. But of course, I'm speeding the footage up and cutting things out, and so it would just sound a bit rubbish to have all the music distorted like that. So I play the game with no music, and then I just add the music, like, in post. So I've got to add the music. I do a bit of color correction as well. Do you want to see what I do? So what you're watching now is what I have, like, this is the color correction I use, and then we'll snap the fingers, the color correction is removed, snap them again. What do you think? Am I wasting render resources by doing that color correction? Does it not make a difference? Don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Genuinely, it would save me a ton of render time by not having to do color correction. Maybe not a huge amount of time. I don't genuinely know how much time I would save by not doing the color correction. I've got a pretty powerful PC. For those that don't know my specs, my GPU is an RTX 4090. My CPU is it's AMD. I think it's a 5950X. Not as good with processor names. I'm pretty sure it's 5950X. I think it's like the tier that's below the tier that's one like notch below Threadripper, because I'm not paying $1,000 for a CPU, right? So it's like to render Kerbal Space Program videos. Like, I think that's more for like people making, I guess, 3D animations like in Blender and stuff. I don't know. I'm not really a computer person. I'm just like I know enough to like play video games and edit stuff, but I'm not super nerdy in like the way it all actually works and the way what all like the acronyms in the BIOS menu mean. I just sort of click things and hopefully try not break anything, but I'm not really like that au fait with computers. Don't know where this tangent even came from, but here we are, docking with the mothership for the final time. There it is. It's funny, like I think I've been in a bit of an Apollo rut lately. I say lately, like for the past 2 years. I feel like whenever I have a command ship and a lander, I always do the Apollo setup where the lander is kind of directly below the engines of the command ship, and then I reconfigure the whole thing in low Kelvin orbits typically so that the lander is kind of attached to the nose of the command ship. I feel like this is the first time I've not done that in like what feels like years. Now I think about it, I just have it in this sort of chain setup instead. I think it's kind of a nice departure from what I normally do. I really like the hybrid engine system where both the engines fire together, both ships share the same fuel supply, they work simultaneously. I think the main reason oh, by the way, I'm transferring all the science from the lander to the mothership because only that little front capsule is going to re-enter at Kerbin, and thus that's got to be what has all the science on it. I think the reason I like doing the Apollo setup where the lander is attached to the nose of the command ship is because then it kind of creates more habitable living space, because the Kerbals could just easily transfer. Like in this case, Kerbals can't naturally internally transfer from the command module into the lander, because the lander is obviously detached. But when it was attached, there's loads of fuel tanks in the way, so they couldn't naturally do that. So it feels a bit unrealistic to transfer crew, and I like having an artificially larger living space. The reason I have detached the lander, you might have seen me do it, but basically I lowered our orbit so that we will be on a collision course with the surface of Bop. I then detached the landers that will crash into the surface harmlessly after removing it of all its liquid fuel to give our command ship as much Delta V as possible. And then we saved ourselves. We put ourselves back on a stable Bop orbit so that we didn't crash into the surface. In fact, we didn't even do that. I basically just burned until we were outside of Bop's sphere of influence and did a burn out of the Jool system. Well, I planned to burn out of the Jool system. Now we're doing the burn. So I had a couple of options available to me. Either I could do a gravity assist off Tylo or Lathe. Usually I do both, actually. And save a lot of fuel, or the video, we're over the 40-minute mark, is getting on a bit, isn't it? Let's just do a burn that gets us directly to Kerbin. We don't need to do a gravity assist and save fuel. I've already done my fair share of gravity assisting in the form of the Tylo capture earlier in the video, so now I'm just going to do a lazy rubbish route back to Kerbin. I didn't even wait for a transfer window. I just said, let's get our orbit around the sun to intersect Kerbin's orbit, and then we'll make another maneuver node close to Peri-G, and we can force a Kerbin encounter that way. It's only going to take a mere several years to get back. And I mentioned earlier that I like having the landers attached to the command module. Let's try to speak properly. Command module to increase the habitable living space to make, these long missions a bit more bearable. Well, I've now condemned our crew to just that tiny little Apollo capsule for, well, it's been 6 years. And they're several years away from that Kerbin encounter. So I think it's like just shy of 10-year total mission time. My orbit there doing lots of freaking out. The video is playing back quite fast, and I was just playing around with the RCS trying to get our Kerbin encounter as close as possible, and then now it's just a case of time warping around until we get relatively close to Kerbin, and then we can fine-tune our periapsis. For some reason I wanted to be encountering Kerbin along an equatorial plane. I don't really know why, to be honest. This was hours ago. I'm like very detached from the mat that filmed this video at this point. And then I just lowered the periapsis to be kind of, within Kerbin's atmosphere so that we would in fact be capturing. Because the capsule at the front has a nice big heat shield. We have 800 units of ablator. Ablator in KSP 1 is so OP. Like, we're coming in so fast. 4,500 meters per second. And like, we barely use any ablator. Like, let's just watch. Are we going to hit 600? So less than 200 ablator units, which is insane. Like, Jool is like one of the furthest things away from Kerbin. In fact, is it like Jupiter, where it's a bit, not Jupiter, is it a bit like Neptune, where it's sometimes a bit further away from the sun than Eeloo? I don't know. Anyway, what I do know, as we've splashed down, let's crossfade to the daytime. I get another beautiful look at Kerbin, which is obviously Lynx's other favourite place in Parallax 2, and there's a little forest over yonder on the horizon, which we could possibly explore another day. But right now we can recover our vessel and see that we have earned 4,465 science. Useless to me, because we've unlocked the tech tree. But we did it for fun, and I hope you had fun watching this video. Thank you so much for watching, and of course thank you so much to all the names on the right. They are my Patreon supporters and my YouTube channel members who make all of this content possible. And of course, massive thanks to Movaglobes once again for sponsoring. Oh my gosh, they're so cool. I love Movaglobes so much. I was genuinely ecstatic when they wanted to sponsor me. So definitely click that link in the description and use my code MATT10 to get 10% off 6-inch and 8.5-inch Movaglobes. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.